There have been more arrests connected to the Laos tragedy that left 6 dead. Authorities now confident they know the exact source of the mass methanol poisoning.
The families of Aussie teens Holly Bowles and Bianca Jones have demanded answers over the deaths of their girls, and they may soon have them. Leaked government documents and an update from the Smart Traveller website pointing the finger at a local spirits maker.
Laos authorities have issued an order prohibiting the sale and consumption of Tiger vodka and Tiger whiskey due to their concerns about these products being a health risk.
The owner of Tiger Vodka has been arrested and the factory now appears shut.
It looks pretty run down, pretty old. There are just stacks and stacks of dirty bottles.
But the manufacturer may not be the only suspect. 3 more employees from the Nana Backpackers have now been arrested, joining 8 previously detained staff, including the manager, who had initially told the media the hostel was not responsible for the poisoning.
The hostel has always given out free shots of Lao vodka to our guests as a gesture of hospitality. We got the alcohol from a trusted shop in Vieng Veng. After drinking here, the guests were sober, they looked healthy and they went out for more drinking.
But will these arrests provide any comfort to the families of the deceased or the survivors who face a long road to recovery?
Lashley King knows all too well what that road to recovery is like. She almost died from methanol poisoning back in 2011 while on holiday in Bali. Ashley, this is so scary. Tell us what happened to you.
So I was living in Australia in Byron Bay, and I decided to go to Bali for 35 days. On my last night, I went out to a bar in Kuta, which was no different from any other night that I had gone out. The next 2 days, I was traveling to New Zealand, and I felt unwell during my travels heading to New Zealand. When I finally got to my accommodation, I went to bed, and when I woke up the next morning, I noticed that it was really dim lighting in the hostel, which I just chalked it up to cheap hostel, cheap lighting. And about 10 minutes later, I was unable to breathe, and I was gasping for air. By the time I had made it to the hospital, I was in the dark blind, and I couldn't breathe. And it took a while for them to figure out what it was that was wrong with me, but they realized that there was a large amount of methanol in my system.
I imagine the scariest moments of your life was that, how did you feel?
It was terrifying, and it was also terrifying knowing that the doctors didn't know what was wrong with me. It was something that they hadn't seen before, and it was kind of a bit of a conundrum for them to figure out what was wrong. But I think the most terrifying thing was the phone call that my parents got back in Canada, being told to get on the first flight to New Zealand because there was a very good chance that I wasn't going to make it.
Had you just ordered a standard drink at the bar?
Yeah, I had just ordered like a tropical cocktail type beverage mixed with vodka. And again, it was nothing out of the ordinary. There was nothing I thought sketchy or anything like that, given I wasn't aware of methanol poisoning, so it wasn't something that was on my radar or I knew to be looking out for. But it was just a standard drink that I had ordered in a bar in Kuta.
So terrifying, because I think many of us have done that and, nothing's happened, so you're grateful that it hasn't. But it's 13 years later for you now. What are the health effects that you are still living with?
So I'm blind now. I've got about 2% of my eyesight. And it was by far the most traumatic and hardest thing I've ever had to go through. I had to learn how to live my life all over again. And losing your eyesight and gaining a disability is really difficult. So
I imagine that it must have been a very particular experience for you hearing about this incident that's unfolded in Laos. What's it brought up for you?
A bit of trauma, a lot of empathy for the families involved, and of course the victims. I know how, I've been in their shoes. I know how easy it is to say yes to a drink at the bar and not think anything bad is going to happen to you. And so I have a lot of empathy for, somebody just looking to enjoy their holiday and something so terrible and, quite frankly, avoidable and that shouldn't be occurring.
Has there been moments for you during recent weeks where you've thought, actually, that could have been me?
Yeah, and the only reason I'm alive today is because I was poisoned on my last night, and it took a couple days for the poison to start taking effect in my body. And I happened to have made it to a first world country and was able to be hospitalized in New Zealand, because had this happened in the middle of my trip while I was in Bali and I had to be hospitalized in Bali, I'm certain that I wouldn't be here, and I just would have been another death.
Oh, it's so devastating, Ashley, that a dream trip can end up in a nightmare like this. We do appreciate you talking to us. Thank you.
Of course, thank you guys so much for having me.